Wallis Simpson, the Duchess of Windsor, remains one of the most polarizing women of the 20th century, remembered as the twice-divorced American who captivated a king and changed the course of British history. Branded by many as the woman for whom Edward gave up his crown, Wallis has often been cast as both villain and victim, a woman pursued by power, but ultimately imprisoned by it. In this video, we're exploring 50 facts you didn't know about the woman who would not and could not be queen. You're watching Cultured Elegance. Make sure to like and subscribe. A Baltimore beginning. Wallis Simpson was born on June 19, 1896, the only child of Teakle Wallis Warfield and Alice Montague. Her birth name, Bessie Wallis Warfield, honored both her father and her mother's elder sister. However, she quietly dropped Bessie early in life, finding the name too old-fashioned and preferring the sleek, distinctive sound of simply Wallis, a privileged yet precarious upbringing. Though her early years were financially modest following her father's untimely death, Wallis's fortunes changed when her wealthy bachelor uncle, Solomon Davies Warfield, later the president of the Seaboard Airline Railway, stepped in to support her education. Between 1912 and 1914, she attended Oldfield School, Maryland's most elite girls' academy, known for educating daughters of America's upper crust, among American heiresses. At Oldfields, Wallis found herself surrounded by young women from some of the most prominent families in the country. Wallis possessed a quiet confidence and social acumen that set her apart. A natural scholar with ambition, Wallis wasn't just socially astute, she was intellectually formidable. One classmate later remembered her as brighter than all of us, a young woman who approached her studies with intensity and resolve. She had a sharp mind, a competitive streak, and a quiet belief that she was destined for something larger than the world into which she was born. The crashes that changed her. While visiting her cousin Corinna Mustin in Pensacola, Florida, Wallis witnessed 2 separate plane crashes, an experience that left her visibly shaken. The incidents occurred during the infancy of aviation and contributed to a lifelong terror of flying, a fear she never fully overcame, even after marrying into a life of international travel. A uniformed courtship. It was during that same visit to Corinne that Wallis met her first husband, Lieutenant Earl Winfield Spencer, Jr., a U.S. Navy pilot known for his dashing looks and reckless charm. They married on November 8, 1916. Though the union offered her a pathway into the respectable world of military society, it quickly revealed itself to be tumultuous and strained. Affairs abroad in the Far East.
I don't remember any love affairs like that anyone would know about. Keep your love affairs secret.
While Spencer was posted overseas, Wallis lived in the naval enclaves of China and the Philippines. During this period, she allegedly began an affair with the Argentine diplomat Felipe de Espiel, an early indication of her penchant for forming powerful and well-placed attachments. A scandalous chapter in China. Wallis's time in China would become the stuff of whispered legend. While still married to Spencer, she reportedly became involved with Count Galeazzo Ciano, a rising Italian diplomat, and the future son-in-law of Benito Mussolini. According to long-standing rumors, she became pregnant and underwent a botched which allegedly left her unable to bear children, a fact that would have lifelong emotional and personal consequences. Her time in China, according to the glamorous Philippine socialite Madame Wellington Koo, left her with only one memorable Mandarin phrase, "Boy, pass me the champagne." The quote, half joke, half indictment, captured both the frivolity and daring that characterized Wallis's early adult years. Her second marriage was built on abandonment. Wallis's second husband, Ernest Simpson, gave up both his wife and daughter to wed her, a decision that haunted him long after she left him for the future King of England. Wallis first met the future king through his mistress. It was through Thelma, Viscountess Furness, then romantically involved with Edward, Prince of Wales, that Wallis was initially introduced to the royal circle. The two women were social acquaintances, and Wallis first entered Edward's orbit during Thelma's own time at court. Their romance allegedly began during Thelma's absence. While Thelma was away on an extended visit to New York, Wallis is believed to have grown closer to the prince. By the time Thelma returned, her place in Edward's affections had been quietly usurped. Edward was enchanted by her boldness. What captivated Edward wasn't Wallis's beauty in the traditional sense, but her force of personality. She spoke to him without deference, teased him, and didn't fawn over his royal status. This irreverence left him so emotionally entangled that friends said he became almost obsessively reliant on her. A royal introduction sparked palace fury. Edward eventually brought Wallis to a private gathering at Buckingham Palace, where she was introduced to members of his family. The encounter caused considerable uproar, especially from King George V, who was incensed that his heir had grown serious about a twice-divorced American woman. He showered her with lavish gifts. Hopelessly enamored, Edward expressed his affection through opulence, jewelry from Cartier, custom couture, and generous financial support. His preoccupation with Wallis became so intense that his advisors noticed a sharp decline in his attention to royal duties. Rumors of an affair persisted, despite the romance. Even as she captivated the future king, Wallis was rumored to have maintained an affair with Guy Marcus Trundle, a suave British executive affiliated with the Ford Motor Company. The gossip was never substantiated, but added to her notoriety. The establishment viewed her with deep suspicion. To many within the British government and society at large, Wallis represented danger, a scheming outsider driven by personal gain. Whispers of her social climbing and unchecked ambition swirled through Whitehall and Westminster alike. Upon becoming King Edward VIII in 1936, Edward suggested a morganatic marriage, a rare arrangement that would allow him to remain monarch while denying Wallis the title and privileges of queen. But the proposal was rejected outright by Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin and leaders of the Commonwealth, who feared a constitutional crisis. Several ministers even threatened to resign should the union go forward. She claimed she never wanted Edward to abdicate. Until the end of her life, Wallis insisted she tried to convince Edward not to give up the throne, though few believed her. She called the abdication a disaster. Privately, Wallis was said to be horrified by Edward's decision to abdicate. She allegedly never wanted to be queen and didn't believe he would follow through. She wrote to her aunt about fearing the throne. In a private letter, Wallis confessed that "I would be the most hated woman in the world if Edward gave up the crown for her." She fled Britain as scandal erupted. When word of her romance with Edward VIII exploded in the British press, Wallis escaped to France under immense pressure. There she was cornered by Lord Brownlow, the king's aide, and coerced into drafting a public statement, releasing Edward from their relationship, a statement she never truly meant. She was powerless to stop the abdication. Despite the popular belief that she pushed for the throne, Wallis reportedly begged Edward not to abdicate, fearing the life-altering consequences. Her protests fell on deaf ears. He had already chosen love over crown.
I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king as I would wish to do, without the help and support of the woman I love.
Their wedding was a global spectacle without royal blessing. When Edward and Wallis married at Château de Condé in 1937, the royal family boycotted the event. No crowned head attended, and yet the world watched, captivated by what felt like a real-life Shakespearean drama. She was under surveillance by British intelligence. Both MI5 and MI6 monitored Wallis before and during her relationship with Edward. Officials suspected she might be a Nazi sympathizer, or worse, a German agent. Hitler allegedly had a file on her. German intelligence reportedly compiled a dossier on Wallis, and Hitler is said to have thought she would have made a perfect Queen of England. She may have had an affair with a Nazi diplomat. Wallis was rumored to have had an affair with Joachim von Ribbentrop, Hitler's foreign minister, while married to her second husband. She mocked royal traditions. Wallis privately ridiculed royal protocol, calling Buckingham Palace the morgue and making fun of royal curtsies and etiquette behind closed doors. Her uncle-in-law called her the lowest of the low. Queen Mary, Edward's mother, and King George V's widow reportedly loathed Wallis, but it was Edward's uncle, the Duke of Connaught, who labeled her the lowest of the low in royal correspondence. She was not welcome at royal funerals. Despite being married to a former king, Wallis was excluded from royal funerals and other major family events, even after decades of marriage. Her title was deliberately withheld. While Edward was allowed to be the Duke of Windsor, Wallis was not granted the title Her Royal Highness, a decision the royal family upheld until her death. The Windsors were exiled to the fringes of Europe. After the abdication, the couple lived in France and the Bahamas, far from the heart of royal life, partly by choice, partly by force. She was nearly poisoned by her staff. During World War II, while serving as the governor of the Bahamas, Edward and Wallis were assigned a Jamaican cook who reportedly attempted to poison her. An alleged Nazi romance shrouded in carnations. According to a 1930s FBI document, Duke Karl Alexander of Württemberg privately claimed that Wallis had engaged in a clandestine affair with Nazi Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop during her time in London. Gossip swirled that she kept a signed photo of him by her bed, and that he sent her 17 carnations daily, each one, it was said, symbolizing a romantic encounter between them. Jimmy Donahue, flamboyant heir to the Woolworth fortune and known for his colorful social life, once boasted that he and Wallis had carried on a secret relationship for 4 years. The claim raised eyebrows not just for its content, but because Donahue was openly gay and a well-known provocateur in elite circles. Whispers of a Chinese intelligence file. Long-circulated rumors suggest that a confidential dossier exists in China, chronicling Wallis's behavior during a visit to the country. Among its more outlandish claims, that she received sexual instruction at a local brothel and had an affair with the future son-in-law of Benito Mussolini. Though impossible to verify, the rumors added to the Duchess's already exotic and controversial mystique. Speculation about her biological identity. Wallis's angular features and athletic build led to persistent rumors that she may have had an intersex condition. Some modern theorists have speculated that she may have lived with a disorder of sexual development, DSD, possibly androgen insensitivity syndrome, AIS, which would have caused her to appear female despite a resistance to male hormones. Others posited even more complex biological theories. While unproven, the gossip fueled decades of speculation about her gender and identity, adding one more shadow to a life already clouded by rumor. She had a collection of erotic letters. Wallis's early letters to her second husband, Ernest Simpson, were laced with playful innuendo and explicit language, so provocative for the 1920s that they shocked even seasoned historians. They revealed a woman unafraid to use wit and sensuality to assert her power. The Queen Mother allegedly blocked reconciliation. Though the Duke of Windsor longed to heal the rift with his royal family, every effort at reconciliation was quietly thwarted. Royal insiders often pointed to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, as the driving force behind the resistance. She reportedly harbored a deep and lasting resentment toward Wallis, whom she blamed for destabilizing the monarchy and hurting her beloved Bertie, later King George VI. Despite occasional contact with other family members, Wallis remained an outsider to the end. Her jewelry collection was worth tens of millions. Wallis Simpson possessed one of the most exquisite private jewelry collections of the 20th century. Her pieces, many custom-made by Cartier, Van Cleef, and Harry Winston, were not only valuable, but also symbolic of her influence and style. From the famous panther bracelet designed by Jeanne Toussaint for Cartier to her personalized diamond brooches engraved with secret messages from the Duke, the collection reflected a life of luxury, obsession, and royal exile. After her death, Sotheby's auctioned the jewels, fetching over $45 million. Her signature look influenced Dior. Wallis's style was sleek, controlled, and impeccably tailored. She favored long, slim silhouettes, modest necklines, and monochromatic tones, creating a look that was both modern and severe. Her fashion choices, born from both personal taste and the desire to be taken seriously by high society, went on to influence the post-war elegance of Christian Dior's new look and the minimalist refinement of Hubert de Givenchy. She was in many ways the original fashion minimalist before the term existed. She kept a tight social circle that included Hollywood stars. Exiled from Buckingham Palace, but embraced by the jet set, Wallis and Edward surrounded themselves with a glittering social circle that included Hollywood legends and European aristocrats. Elizabeth Taylor, Marlene Dietrich, Noel Coward, and even Coco Chanel were regular guests or correspondents. The Windsor's salons in Paris and the Riviera became centers of glamour, gossip, and continental sophistication, allowing Wallis to wield cultural influence, even as she remained persona non grata within royal circles. Pug obsession, even in decor. Wallis's love for pugs went far beyond the living, breathing variety. She famously owned 11 decorative pillows shaped like her beloved dogs, each one meticulously placed at the foot of her bed. The display was as eccentric as it was endearing, a soft, velvety shrine to the breed she adored. She was criticized for wartime indulgence. While Britain rationed food and endured blackouts, Wallis indulged in shopping sprees in America. British tabloids condemned her extravagance as tone-deaf and disgraceful during a time of national suffering. She had a sharp, secret nicknaming habit. Wallis had a penchant for assigning cutting nicknames to royals. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was dubbed Cookie, and Queen Elizabeth II, then a girl, was wryly referred to as Shirley, after child actress Shirley Temple. Her jewels were the stuff of mystery and intrigue. In 1946, several of Wallis's prized jewels mysteriously vanished while she was a guest at Ednam Lodge, the country home of the Earl of Dudley. At the time, whispers circulated that the theft had been orchestrated by members of the royal family, hoping to reclaim pieces believed to have once belonged to the royal collection. Years later, in 1960, a man named Richard Dunphy came forward and confessed to the crime, putting the more sensational theories to rest, at least officially. Her estate was allegedly exploited by her lawyer. Suzanne Blum, Wallis's French lawyer, was granted sweeping control over the Duchess's estate. Biographers accused Blum of mismanagement and manipulation, claiming she sold valuable possessions at a fraction of their worth. A life of isolation behind Parisian walls. After the Duke of Windsor passed away from cancer in 1972, Wallis spent her remaining years in near-total seclusion at their home on Paris's Bois de Boulogne. Cut off from the world they once dazzled, she was cared for by a revolving cast of lawyers, nurses, and household staff, most of whom she barely knew. Once the center of royal scandal, Wallis had become a silent shadow of herself, bedridden and almost entirely mute. Though estranged from the royal family in life, Wallis continued to receive a private allowance from Queen Elizabeth II after Edward's death. Suffering from advancing dementia and growing frailty, she endured multiple falls and fractured her hip twice during this period. Her lavish past stood in stark contrast to the quiet, painful reality of her final chapter. Her memoirs were carefully sanitized. Published in 1956, her autobiography, The Heart Has Its Reasons, omitted or softened many of the most controversial chapters of her life. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to explore my most recommended books on Wallis Simpson, linked in the description below, and let me know in the comments which fact surprised you the most, or is there one you think I should have included? If you'd like to support the channel, you'll find links to our weekly newsletter and channel membership options also in the description. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves history, elegance, or a little royal intrigue. Until next time.